Welcome to the scalr sagecast, bite-sized wisdom for ambitious business minds.
Welcome back to the scalr sagecast. I'm Matt Woodard and delighted today to be welcomed by the wonderful Laura Johnson. Hey Laura, how are you doing?
Good, thanks, Matt. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for taking the time to join today. So, Laura was someone who I really was keen to get onto the podcast. Somebody who has been a really good friend over the last few years, been really supportive of me and joining some of the work that I'm doing, and just been a real source of support for me and advice, and the occasional verbal kick up the bum as well as needed. But Laura's does a huge amount of the community, which we'll touch on, but often the sort of person that doesn't really like the limelight. So I thought this was a great opportunity to hear a bit about her story. So for those of you who don't know Laura, she's the founder of Striving. Striving is a curated platform that enables people to learn, connect, and level up with the support of community and expert advice. She's been in marketing for about 15 years, mostly B2B tech, but the last 8 in HR tech. And as we touched on, she's started Striving about 3 years ago. So keen to hear a bit about how that's come about, but also just to touch on the fact that you've recently become an Amazon best-selling author as well. So exciting times for you. So keen to hear a bit about that. So welcome. Tell us a bit about your journey.
Thanks. Yeah, journey. So 15 years, not 20. Thank you, Matt, in marketing. So I graduated in 2009, which anyone in the UK would know was height of recession, and there wasn't really any graduate jobs. But I managed to get a 3-month placement in Jersey doing a sales and marketing admin role. And 3 months doing marketing felt a lot better than my other options. So I headed to Jersey for 3 months, ended up staying 5 years. That was my first role, and that was in a B2B tech company. So looking back now, there was 140 people at that company, and there was 4 of us that were female, 2 were in reception. And I was lucky that the other one was finance director, who really took me under her wing and was like, hey, this is what's going to happen in the office. You don't make the tea, you don't do this. And was really just kind of like girl power to everything. But had a really, really supportive group of friends, still good friends with a lot of the guys that worked there. So it was interesting. Looking back at it, definitely lots of lessons learned. But it was the managing director from that business that moved over to Jersey Post. And I ended up going with him to do a digital transformation project, which, to really make me sound old, was around how do we get the post office online so you could actually buy things online. So he started a mild stamp addiction that my dad still hasn't got over. So he just buys me stamps all the time, which is cute. From one job I had 10 years ago. But then after being in Jersey for kind of 5 years doing marketing there, I had one of those, if I want a big career, I have to go and live in London. So I headed over to London, lasted about 18 months. And then really, honestly, the Northern Line just killed me. I love London. I hated living there. I lived on the beach in Jersey. I was completely spoiled rotten in hindsight. So London was just one of those kind of big culture shocks where this is fun, but it's too much. So I decided to go traveling. And that's when it gets to that kind of cliche story that I ended up in Australia and I'm still here. Came to visit my friend that lives on the Central Coast for 6 weeks, and nearly 9 years later, I'm still here. Managed to get a job, standard, right, as most Brits. But got a job at a HR tech startup. There was only 10 of us at the time, and then went on a huge growth journey with those guys. And I think just got really addicted to kind of startup life and the journey that we went on, and then ended up in a few more startups since then. So just really stuck in that HR tech space since. And then, yeah, like I say, kind of 3.5 years ago, Striving was a COVID accident, which I'm sure I'm not supposed to say anymore, but that's the truth. It was one of those, made myself redundant, thought I'd go traveling, and then COVID happened. So I remember just like staring at my housemate at the time being like, what should we do? How about this? So I turned into that baking. So I baked, made homemade granola for breakfast and bagels for lunch. And we slowly got fatter over the course of the next few weeks until the Antler program popped up. And for 10 weeks, I got to hang out with really smart people and learn all about kind of VC investments and the other side of startup life. And that's where Striving was born.
So tell me about Striving, because in the couple of years that I've known about the platform and the work you do, it's been amazing to see the uptake and the amount of people that are really keen to support it, but also to use the learnings to help up level their careers. How did it all come about?
Yeah, it was one of those, and I guess like I hesitate because it's kind of what Striving, what I thought it would be versus what it is, which I guess we'll get into as well. But how it came about was a little bit, I said, I moved over here and I got a job that I didn't intend to get in a really high grade startup, which was amazing, but it meant that most of the time you didn't actually know what you were doing. And I really missed having people around me that I knew. So I made friends with everybody else that was in HR tech, that was in marketing, and I made them be friends with me, and then I made them be friends with everybody else. So we had like a little Slack channel, and everybody shared resources and templates and great agencies who's worked with. And suddenly life became a bit easier and a lot less lonely. That happened at the same time as I did something called the Marketing Academy, which is an incredible program for marketers. They only take 30 people a year, and it's a full scholarship. So you get given 30 people that are at a similar stage in their careers. You get given a coach, you get given mentors, you get given these amazing courses. And it was incredible. And it's really just focused on leadership within marketing and how do we get more marketers into CEO positions. So I think between the kind of community mentoring and coaching side, I felt like I leveled up a lot, but I also felt that like working life just got a lot easier. So it was really one of those, like, how do we enable that for everybody? So it isn't just 30 people a year that get that, or a small group of people. And my focus at the time was really around that startup landscape, where I was like, there's so many startups where you've got one person teams or really small teams doing loads on really small budgets. How do we help them? And how do we make sure that we're all not just sat by ourselves making the same mistakes? Like, surely we can all level up together. So that's kind of where it started. And then kind of coming out of the back of Antler, it was more like, you've got to be a little bit more focused. If it's just you, where are you going to start? So HRTA, people and culture, was kind of the space I started in, because that's everyone I knew through work in HR tech. But it was also at the start of COVID. So they were the people that had been impacted the most, and also the people that wanted to help out the most. So many people put their hands up to help. So we really created the community around that group of people to start with. I did spend the first, we can probably go into startup mistakes and do a whole podcast series on it separately, but I did everything they tell you not to, and like spent a lot of money and a lot of time and got a lot of gray hair through developing a tech platform that I didn't love, and we ended up rebuilding it 3 times. So we've definitely focused more on community and events than we'd originally thought about. But in hindsight, that's exactly where we should have started. I could have saved myself a lot of time, money, hassle, and we'd probably be a lot further along. But I think that's the joy of having your own business for the first time, right?
So I think you're unique in that in that
No.
in that at all, to be honest. So do you feel like now that that you've had these iterations, that Striving is kind of where you want it to be? This is how you want the platform to go?
No, it's definitely not where I want it to be. I've got this really beautiful prototype that an incredible friend, an incredible product designer built for me, and I want that. But I think that's probably a few million, and a product team that does not involve me, because I'm not a product manager. That's the other thing we found out over the last few years. So yeah, look, I'm really happy. Striving is something that, again, as a known business, like, you always want it to be bigger and do more because it's your baby and you love it. But I've met some incredible people. It's been an amazing journey, and I wouldn't change it. But would I love it to be further forward? And would I love more tech there that could help more people? Absolutely. That's not the plan for the next 12 months. The plan is really to double down on community and events, and do a lot more research and talk to a lot more people before we start spending large chunks of money on technology again. But yeah, it's not where I wanted it to be, but I do love the journey, and I think it's probably the way it has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're the sort of person that every time I speak to you, you've got a new idea or a new initiative, or can I just run this new thing past you that I've decided to try and do? It's amazing the amount of sort of innovation that you're trying to seeking for this. What is there anything within Striving that you want to sort of like double down on that has been really successful for you so far?
Yeah, so I think it really is just that community element and enabling more face-to-face meetups, but smaller, and I guess greater value to them. Because I think there's obviously lots of events going around, but I do still think that people are missing that connection. I'm also an introvert, so I hate big rooms and big spaces. But I love going to have coffee with someone I don't know, because one person's great. So how do we enable a little bit more of that, I guess? And how do we get a wider reach? Like I think I said to you, we started doing some cold outreach around an idea we had around lunch club. Like, how do we get small groups of people together, just have lunch, like no agenda, just you at work in HR, go and grab lunch and have fun. And we did a few hours of cold outreach on that to test the idea, because the team love it when I have a new idea. They always make me go and test it myself with people I don't know, so no one can tell me I'm doing a good job. That's why I'm not allowed to talk to you about things until we've done the cold test first. But we had hundreds of people sign up in a really short space of time. So I think there's things like that where we do want to do some like smaller test and learn, and just work out how we can create more face-to-face connection to people. And really just work out what the right balance between online connection and face-to-face is, because I still think it's a juggle for all of us that are working hybrid.
So there's there's that real obvious desire for people to be back together again. I guess we've obviously, as you say, we've got used to that hybrid world of kind of working remotely and not venturing into the city too much. You know, it's kind of people are really making roles work for them. But at the same time, it's kind of been to the detriment of connection, physical connection, which is why, you know, while we continue to run the recruitment meetups and the other ones around the country have been so well attended and regarded. So it's a great thing to do. But tell me, I'm really keen to hear a bit more about the your best-selling book. How did that all come about?
That was another great idea I had before Christmas. The team didn't think it was a great idea at the start of this year. No, it was so every year for International Women's Day, we always put on a whole host of events. I guess going against the cupcake theme that everyone else is against this year, which was great to see. But we kind of just said, you know, it should be more than a day. So every year we've done a week's worth of events. The first year was 3 events, the next year it was 6, this year it was 11. So every year it gets a bit bigger, but it's our favorite week of the year. Like, it's always hectic and everybody hates what I've planned about 2 weeks before we do it, including me, which every year I'm like, why did I do this to myself? But every year it's incredible. But just before Christmas, I was kind of like doing a bit of research, and I was in a bookshop, and there was this beautiful book about women creatives showcasing their portfolios. And I was just like flicking through, and I was like, you never see books like this. There's not enough books telling women's stories. So I went back and said to the team, I was like, I think we should tell 100 women's stories for International Women's Day. And everyone was like, you don't have time to interview 100 people. And I was like, we'll make time, it'll be fine. So again, reached out to 100 people I didn't know, leaders, so everyone that had had at least 10 years in a leadership position, whole range of industries, backgrounds, kept it to Australia, was the only kind of caveat just for time zone and trying to manage that. And asked 100 people I didn't know whether they'd be featured in a book if we wrote it. And 83 of them came back and said, yes, they would. So I was like, okay, that means there's an audience for this from that tiny test. So let's do it. So we roped in 100 women that all wrote their stories around what they've learned through leadership, their journeys, things they wish they'd known, things, you know, that new leaders should watch out for. And we managed to pull it together in 3 months. And that's the only regret. Like, it was an incredible book. I would do it again. I just wouldn't do it in 3 months.
What did you find, were there any themes that came out from the book? Anything, any sort of key learnings that you had outside of obviously giving yourself more time to pull it together?
Don't try and organize 100 people within 3 months and publish on Amazon. Don't do it. If anyone's publishing on Amazon and wants to talk, let me know, because it was an experience. I think themes, you know what I found really interesting is that there wasn't the key themes that we thought they were going to be. I think one of my favorites was on the question of work-life balance. Out of 100 people, no 2 people had the same answer to that, which I think is again something we knew, but it was kind of fascinating, the broad range of answers to that. I think, I guess, some of the other themes that came out were a lot more around like finding your people, and that, I guess, this is stuff that we know, right? But you find people that, you know, have your back and want you to succeed, and that, you know, the earlier you can do that in the career, better. But also, again, networking, making the time to network, taking people on a career journey with you, having other people's backs was another great one. And I think one of the other things, I guess, was just like learning to back ourselves earlier. You know, imposter syndrome isn't just for women, but it does affect women differently, I think, particularly when it's return to work and different things like that, that we can question ourselves differently. So I think it's just that, you know, being aware of imposter syndrome earlier, working out how you're going to handle it and what you're going to do with it, and then backing yourself.
Absolutely. That's really interesting itself, that there wasn't the kind of, that everybody has a different version of that, and everyone's obviously had a different journey to get to be the success they have been. So what's next for Striving?
We're probably not going to publish a book for a while. Somebody asked me about that last week, and I was like, I think we're a little scarred still. No, so more seriously, what's next? What's come off the back of the book is we had quite a few businesses come to us and ask how they could better support their women in leadership, which was a really nice outcome that I actually hadn't thought about. We really wrote the book for individuals to take a little bit of inspiration, and to your point, know that no 2 journeys are the same, and how we all got here was very different. But we had a few businesses come to us and ask us about it. So we're working with a few right now, and we're launching an emerging leaders program that starts next week. So that will be a really interesting one for us. And then we're also working on a program of how we get more women into tech. And that's early days, but hoping to launch something later this year on that as well. So there'll be a whole bunch of work that's come from the Women in Leadership book that we didn't expect. And then more from a Striving point of view, like I say, Lunch Club is launched in kind of MVP stage. So we had 2 lunch clubs last week. I think we've got 8 this week. So we're going to do a little bit of test and learn on that. And then we've got our first full day conference on the 25th of July called Fuel Your Future, which isn't launched yet, but hopefully will be by next week. So yeah, a few things going on, but really, as I say, just trying to do a little bit more test and learn on some experiments for how we can get people together and make sure they get enough, lots of value from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and we've actually got the first lunch club in Melbourne today, so really looking forward to meeting some new people.
Yeah, thanks for hosting, Matt.
Pleasure. So I guess moving on a little bit, obviously you've worked in HR tech for most of your career from a marketing perspective. Obviously scalr as an organization is a talent advisory business. What experience have you had, I guess, working with talent teams to sort of help support the businesses you've been in?
So I think all the businesses I've been in have been really small. So I think if people and culture or talent acquisition is there, it's one person. But I've always loved, because I'm just a complete marketing geek at the end of the day, like recruitment marketing, employee branding. I love all that kind of stuff. So any people and culture or TA person, I've just kind of grabbed hold of them and said, you're my new best friend and we're going to do these things. So I've always had a really good relationship from that point of view. And I love, obviously, being in HR tech. You get to see a little bit of it because that's who you're talking to. And the whole world of work and that side of things really fascinates me. And I think, as we were saying before we started this, when I first started Striving, it was TA and people and culture the first people to put their hands up to help out. Like, they were all the people that were like, yeah, we'll have coffee. Yes, we'll talk to you about what we're doing. Yeah, and we'll mentor. So the platform definitely wouldn't be where it was today without those people.
And with Striving, you've done quite a few sessions and groups and created community for talent people. I think it's clear that the remit of talent has broadened over the last few years. What are you finding from those sessions in terms of equipping people with the skills for future?
That's a great question. I think a lot of the stuff, and we were talking about this with a coach the other day who ran a session, was like, so many of it comes down to communication. Like, whatever the problem is or whatever the topic, like I know we get caught up in AI and lots of different themes that come up, but when you get down to like most things in life, it really comes down to communication, whether that's communication with your team, with the wider organization, with C-suite. And there's so much, no matter what the topic is, that better communication or more time focused on communication, because I think so many of us are time poor that we forget how much effort and planning we could put into the communication side of things. So I think that's a big one. And I think the other side of that is just like, we've seen so much change in the market over the last couple of years, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think so much of that, again, comes down to communication with C-suite, to telling them what we're seeing and what's happening, because you guys are often at the cold face of things and can really see what's happening before the rest of the business does.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could give any advice to hiring managers or people looking to scale their businesses from a talent acquisition perspective, would there be any key messages you would want to pass on?
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think it's that communication piece, right? I mean, is there a day that goes by that we don't log on to LinkedIn, someone's been ghosted or someone's had a crappy rejection email, right? Like, there's so many different tech platforms out there. If you can't handle it all yourself, like, there's so many things that you can automate. And not now, or any kind of response is better than being ghosted. And I think there's that. I think the other one is just like really thinking strategically about talent pooling and longer term. Like, maybe you've only got 1 or 2 roles now because you're a small team, but you've probably got a phenomenal number of applicants there. So how are you just kind of keeping touch with them? How are you staying top of mind for the point that next time you've got a role, you've got the people there ready to go? And again, that just comes down to comms, right?
It's really interesting to hear an outsider's perspective on that, because that's the conversation I have a lot, just because you're not hiring now, what's the future look like? What does the FY25 hiring look like, FY26, how are you positioning yourself to make sure that you're not continually going back to the well every time, that you have a good brand, ongoing good brand in the market, regardless of whether you're hiring or not. So it's a really good point. Okay, moving on. This is the bit that I really look forward to, particularly 3 pieces of advice or three learnings that you've gained through your entrepreneurial career so far. What would they be, Laura?
3 pieces of advice. Okay, so I think one, and we've said it, is backing yourself. There is never a right time to start your own business. You'll never have all the answers. It's just one of those. Sometimes you just got to put yourself out there, back yourself, and get on with it. I think the other one, from an entrepreneurial perspective, if I can even say the word, is finding your people along the journey. Like you said before, like, you and I are very good at sharing the good, the bad, and ugly with each other, and we give each other a kick up the arse when we need to and a shoulder to cry on when we need to, but we're also there to celebrate each other's wins. And it's really nice to have somebody that understands the journey, because not everybody does. And I think that does make life a lot easier. And then I think the other one is celebrate the little wins. And they can be really tiny, but you've got to, because you're constantly chasing the next thing and the big thing if you've got your own business and you've started out on that journey. So if you don't, focus on the little things during the way, I think like one, you'll just end up burning yourself out, but you'll probably just end up being a little bit cynical about it because it really is a journey. So make sure that you pick the good stuff up as you go, and keep a swipe folder with all the nice things people say for when you need to pick me up, or that time then something actually goes live when it's supposed to, or you hit your sales target, whatever it is. Make sure you celebrate with everybody.
Yeah, that's a really good one to finish with. Yeah, I think certainly within the kind of functions and the kind of services that marketing and TA provide, there's always something more to do. And there's certainly something that I noticed when working internally is that you hired 50 people in a year, massive achievement, but you don't celebrate because there's always that extra role to fill. There's always that sort of thing. So I think it's coming up, smelling the roses and celebrating those wins is often the most the thing that gets missed. So I guess in summary, so back yourself, find your people, and celebrate those successes when they come along. I think those three really, really valuable pieces of advice, and wish you all the very best with striving and all the obviously the new things you're going to be doing from there. We'll post the link actually to the Kindle book, for the Women in Leadership. I think that's something that a lot of people will want to read and want to support. So I'll do that. But otherwise, LJ, thank you. Thanks so much for taking time out of your hectic schedule to chat with me today. Wish you all the very best of everything, and thanks to everybody for listening, and stay tuned for another episode next week. Bye.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you.